Hi, welcome to this week's Raqs Talks. I'm Perizaad.
I'm Faizeh.
And this week we have the fabulous Mariana.
Yay! Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're so excited to get into this, so let's just dive in. Mariana, can you please tell our viewers, listeners, people, how you got started in belly dance, like we ask everybody?
Before belly dance, I was like the least girly girl you could ever imagine. I never wore makeup. I was the true Northwest, persona. I was always out in the mountains climbing. And so I had just ridden my bike from Seattle to Vancouver, BC, and I was just riding to work like the weekend right after, and I got hit by a car. I was on my bike, and I ended up with a lot of soft tissue injuries, actually, not any broken bones, fortunately, but I ended up having to spend about 2 years in physical therapy. And my physical therapist is also my best friend, so it kind of worked out. made our friendship stronger. But a friend of mine said, you should try belly dance because it will really help loosen up your hips. And she dragged me to the first class, and I've been hooked ever since.
I have to say, you're like a rare one that wasn't like, I was really into Shakira.
I totally get where you're coming from with the whole, wasn't a girly girl before, because I had some tomboy tendencies. And I can say that, when I got into belly dance, it really, really opened up my feminine side. And to the point that I was in a show, I was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon, little baby college student. They were like, yes, you can be in our show. It's fine. You have no lines. It's okay. And I was playing a nun, and I was so sad that I wasn't in belly dance costumes that I actually slapped my hat at one day out of frustration because I was so mad that it wasn't pink or purple or covered in rhinestones. Belly dance has definitely turned me into much, much, much more of a girly girl than I would have been without it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm a total sparkle person now, for sure. I grew up very, very strict. And I wasn't allowed to wear makeup at all. And because I wasn't allowed to wear it, I never really got a chance to experiment with it and just didn't know what to do with it. And now I look at my belly dance pictures from when I was a baby dancer, I'm like, oh my God.
You're also, in addition to being a belly dancer, you're also a personal trainer. Were you a personal trainer before your car accident, or were you inspired with physical therapy? How did you come about to be a personal trainer?
That's a great question, actually, because I was always athletic, but I was the kid that when it was time to pick the person to be on their team, they're like, any but her. I was very small and very thin, and I wasn't very strong. So I'd always been very active, and from, when I was a teenager, I was always going to the club and the gym, so I always had a passion for it. And then when I started belly dancing and eventually evolved into becoming a teacher here locally, I realized some of these things that some of these people are saying, that's not right. That can hurt you. Because in undergrad, I was going to become a veterinarian. And so most of my undergrad had been general sciences. So I'd taken anatomy, I'd taken biology, and I knew the basics of kinetics to know what was right and what was wrong. And so belly dance really is kind of what set that course into action. And I decided that I was gonna become a personal trainer. And to be honest, it was a lot of stops and starts because I had work, I had a full-time job, I was performing, I was teaching, and it just was never happening for me. And finally, during COVID, I had nowhere to go and no more excuses for I can't study anymore. At the start of it, I think it was in March or April, I'm like, okay, I'm opening up the books. I took some anatomy courses to help supplement my studying here with a local dancer. Her name is Sherry Lewis. She runs Westlake Dance Center. Wonderful woman. Did a great workshop on anatomy for about a month that I took with her. And that helped me kind of get right on course.
How do the two interconnect?
So in addition to the personal training, I also, before I did that, I went to become a Les Mills certified instructor. And if you guys are familiar with Les Mills at all, Les Mills is the pinnacle of instructor training. They not only, like, they're really super strict on choreography. Like, there's no excuse. You have to 100% know the choreography because that's what you're teaching to. Once you get that done, then you have to know the cues, right? Know how to cue people when to do the exercise. And then finally, you have to have that, like, that teacher, they call it teacher magic.
Yeah.
And that combined with the personal training has taught me so much about how to instruct a class, how to get people motivated to actually do the exercise. Because exercise, if you're doing it all the time, then you love it, right? You know, you're fit. It's not, you know, it's something enjoyable. But if you're not someone who is always working out, exercise is not pleasant. It's miserable. You have to find a way to reach that person who is either struggling with the choreography. You know, you say left and everyone goes right. And, you know, so you have to help those people gain the confidence to want to come back. You have to help the person who's miserable in your class because they're out of shape and, you know, it's difficult for them to do, feel encouraged to come back. So the Les Mills helped me with that coaching and instructing. And then the personal training just was kind of like the icing on the cake in that, okay, now when I'm looking across a floor and I'm looking across a room, I can now say with credentials that, you know, when you do that, this is what's weak. This is what's happening and this is what you need to strengthen. It's like that knowledge was always there, but I never felt confident to say it without that certificate in place.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of teachers, like in belly dance, will say, "No, just keep going." And I'm like, "No, you blow out your knees. You know, you don't want to do a Turkish drop that way. You need to have a strong core before you do something like that. You need to have a strong back. Not everybody's anatomy is the same, right? We don't
Correct. Exactly.
range of motion. Our joints don't have the same range of motion either. So it's not just flexibility; it's your joint range of motion. It's your body composition, and all the injuries you've had previously in your life are going to affect how you're going to move.
Yeah, I will say to your point about how the bodies are all different. I know that there have been times in my classes with someone who has a different body type and they're struggling with something. They're showing me and they're like, "It hurts right here." And I'm like, "I don't know." And I say, you know, if it's this kind of pain, then it's probably because it's weak. If it's this kind of pain, stop doing that. And that's not going to be part of your repertoire or whatever.
People train different muscles differently for different activities. Like, I was just hate watching Cats with Laura Leah last night. There is a part where Idris Elba's character is up on something, and I think it's with the main character Victoria, and like the actress who played Victoria was clearly a ballerina, and has been doing ballet for years, versus Idris Elba, who's playing McCavity. And Idris Elba is just a strong guy. Like, he has been weight training, or if he's been doing athletics, it's going to be for a more contact heavy sport. And you can see it in their shoulders. And so it's one of those things where it's like, if you have somebody who's coming from, you know, this completely different background, like say they've been doing basketball their whole life and then they blow their knee and now they're doing belly dance because it's a low impact sport, because, you know, this person over here is going to have a very different set of muscles than this person over here. So how do we train them to get from this physique to this physique safely? So doing what you do is so important to this community. And I know you do a lot of videos about that.
The cross training is so important for dancers. And that's one area that I see a lot of reluctance, even if, you know, because I know for some people doing weights or doing like a body combat class, you know, like me, it seems something that, you know, isn't as appealing. But try, let's say, hip hop, try contemporary, if you like to dance and you like movements, trying a different form of dance movement can do so much for your dance. It will elevate you. Like you won't know it until you've seen the results months later. And I'd love to see more dancers take some contemporary or lyrical. It adds so much to the vocabulary you have as a dancer.
One of the only things that keeps me on top of doing other kinds of fitness. Perizaad and I were talking earlier this week about how, I do heavy weights at the gym for my bones because I don't want to have brittle bones and I want to be prepared for that. Now that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, like maybe I'll get back to work later this spring or this summer or something like that. I'm feeling hopeful. And so I'm trying to get back into dancer shape. And earlier this week, I was like, I need to just get back to fun dancing. So I put on some videos on YouTube where they have choreographies for fitness, like the honky tonk badonkadonk or whatever, And so I started doing that every day and did a live performance last night. And it was the first one I had done in months. And I was really nervous about it. And I was like, the only way I'm going to get better at this again is just to do it. I can't just keep waiting until I'm back to what I was a year ago. It actually went way better. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I started doing another kind of dance.
It's also a really important point because when Albert Einstein would get stuck on a problem, like if he was trying to figure out something in physics and he just couldn't get it, he couldn't just get his brain through the equation, he'd go and he'd play violin. And because his brain was working in a different way and on something else, it was freed up to find other paths. And so he would play violin, he'd have a breakthrough, and then he'd go back and be able to finish the problem. I mean, that's actually, I don't know what the fields call, but they've proven that time and time again, that if you have something that isn't related to what you normally do, that you go and you do, it'll help you find your way through barriers, through struggles. It's one of the best ways to do it. Also, conversely, taking belly dance to any other type of dance will blow their minds.
I absolutely agree with what you said about stopping and doing something else. And sometimes, and what I've learned through the pandemic is sometimes you don't have to do anything else, right? Sometimes, and goes for not just physical activity, but also for mental. If you're like, I don't have any new ideas. I need new ideas. I need new things to do. Do you remember when you were a kid and before there were cell phones and YouTube and you'd have to entertain yourself, right? You'd have to go outside and play. And I remember coming home and telling my mom, I'm bored. And my mom would say, well, stare at a wall. And eventually you kind of figure your own shit out, right?
Yeah.
You start to solve your own problems. And I often find that other activity, for me, because I live in the Northwest, it's hiking, right? I'm on a trail and I'll have, I'm just kind of in a zone. I'm just walking along this trail, and if it's the more strenuous, the more focused I am in that moment. And then all my thoughts just kind of empty my head. And that allows other things to come in. And I'm not a musician, so I don't know if music is the same way, but with activity, definitely I found I remember when I was rock climbing and I would have to place pro into a rock wall, I would have a song that would just repeat over and over in my head. And that song would kind of help give me focus. And then on the drive home, I'm just pondering things. And then I come home and I'm like, oh my God, I have all these ideas. Yeah, I think a lot of that just has to do with being in the moment.
Yes.
Right? And just allowing yourself to be present. And you don't necessarily have to hike, but meditation is also a very nice way to, nice way to get to it without having to leave your home. It's necessary to clear the mind so that you can allow things to process and allow things to enter. And, some thoughts leave, that's okay. I traveled a lot alone over the last 5 or 6 years. I finally said I gave so much of my adult life to my career. And I remember I had wanted to go to Spain for about 5 weeks, and I had asked my employer, I said, hey, I'd like to go to Spain for 5 weeks. I know I'm eligible for 5 weeks vacation now. And they're like, well, it's not really a good time, and so can you take your laptop? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna quit.
Nice.
And it was scary, because I didn't have a plan. It was something that I think I was just burned out, and it was just a very emotional reaction. And but it's the best decision I ever made. It forced me to kind of find myself instead of just doing the career that I thought I was supposed to be doing. And it allowed me to travel alone, and it allowed me to let go of a lot of fears. And I learned to really enjoy myself. Having that time alone and spending a lot of time by yourself really forces you to deal with your own issues and either accept them or resolve them.
So now I have to ask where in Spain you went, because Perizaad lived in Spain for
3 months. I was in Salamanca.
Oh, nice. So I went back and forth quite a bit, actually, over several years. So that time that I went to Jerez de la Frontera, which is Andalusia, and then I went back, and then the second time I went back, I just drove all the way around the Iberian Peninsula, so starting in Barcelona and then all the way through Portugal and through the north of Spain. And then I went back again and again went to Jerez de la Frontera, and then spent some time in Madrid. I studied with Nesma over in Madrid as well. And I have a teacher in Jerez de la Frontera who, her name is Nada, and she is of Lebanese descent. And, like I said, you're traveling on your own, and you're like, this is what I love about belly dance. No matter where you go in the world, you will find a belly dancer and she will be your friend. So I was in there, I was studying flamenco, and I'm like, but I want to take belly dance classes. And I found her, and I went back again for a few years to go back and see her. So with her, I traveled through to southern parts of Spain, and then went to Morocco a couple of times with her, and then went to Morocco by myself. I remember sitting in my hotel bed in my hostel, and I'm like totally freaking myself out, reading like women shouldn't travel there alone. It's very dangerous. I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm making a bad decision. Totally fine. But again, traveling solo, you make friends,
Yeah.
You meet so many cool people. You have so many experiences that you would never have otherwise. I met at one of the places I was staying at, I met a French lady who was living there, working for the consulate or something, and she took me to all the local hangouts. I got to go to a local hammam. That was an experience because, I'd never been to a Moroccan hammam. I'd been to the Andalusian ones, which are really fancy schmancy. They have all these beautiful pools and you massage and they give you tea. No. There's no pools here. It is, you come in, you take off your clothes and put them in, your little cubby, and then they give you a bucket and they say, go in. And then they assign you a lady if you don't have a lady, and she takes you by the arm and she goes, scrub, and she's just scrubbing the shit out of you. And you're all naked. And so it's there's no inhibitions here, nothing she's scrub, lean over. It was an experience, you go to these different rooms to kind of, to soak, to let the steam kind of just, soften you up. And then you're sitting on the floor and you're douching yourself, It's such a bizarre experience, but I don't regret it.
Did you go just kind of on your own, I want to do this and this and this, or did you go with a group by yourself, or?
Nah, it was crazy stupid. I went by myself.
No, I wish I was brave enough to do that. I'm in the middle of reading Morocco's book, and she is just kind of talking about all the times that she's gone and lived, spent all this time in various places. And one of the things that she talks about is how if she hadn't been from America, if she had been part of the culture, she wouldn't have been able to learn as much as she did because she wouldn't have been allowed to travel by herself.
What I learned is you will always find a friend. You get to a certain stage in life, you got a good radar, you got your good sixth sense going on there that, you just know someone is not going to be trustworthy. And I've traveled a lot alone, and I've learned how to read people out, and I've never had a bad experience with anyone that I've allowed to allow myself to open up. And I've had amazing conversations, where they don't really speak English, you don't really speak their language, that are really insightful with people, across the globe. So definitely take that chance. Right about when COVID was happening, I was in Israel. So I went to the Eilat dance festival that Orit puts on. Orit had come to Seattle about 2 or 3 years ago. But I'd been following her festival online, and it looks like a wild party. And it is a wild party. And I was like, I need to be a part of that. And so I finally just decided, okay, I'm going to do it. You know, no good time is ever the right time. So I'm just going to go. And I'm so glad I went because, you know, it's not happening right now.
I've never traveled outside of the United States for a festival, and that's something that is definitely on my bucket list to do.
Yeah, she has it again. Definitely, I highly recommend that because it's done on the Red Sea. And if you're not comfortable traveling solo, she kind of takes care of everything for you. You just kind of show up and they shuffle you around. So I did that for like the duration of the festival. And then when it was over, I hopped on a bus. I went to Jerusalem. And then from Jerusalem, I found this little tour company. They take you in a little bus that will take you into the Palestinian territories. And then when I got there, I talked to the driver and I'm like, hey, I would really like to go explore more of Palestine. He goes, well, I have a friend who can drive you around. I'm like, okay.
That is awesome.
It was such a cool experience because, you know, he took me to, he's just a local guy and he took me and showed me the town. And, you know, we bought some food off the road. And, you know, the most dangerous thing I did was there's a funicular that you take up to, in Jericho, you take a funicular, and this thing is old. That was the most dangerous thing, honestly, I think, because that's when I was like, I don't know if this thing is going to make it, you know?
Being able to do all these interviews, we've been able to talk to a few legends in Los Angeles, but I understand that you are interviewing some of the belly dance legends of the Pacific Northwest.
Yes. So how it started is back at the beginning of the quarantine, start of, you know, everyone staying home, I had been watching a lot of online hoplas and I felt like something was missing, you know? I was watching them and, you know, I have a short attention span already as it is, so this is getting kind of like, I was like, oh, I can't watch anymore. And I realized what was missing was what I enjoy about performing is the interaction with people. I miss that, like, you know, when you're in a restaurant and you pull someone up and they're like, oh, no, oh, yeah. You know, seeing them like, you know, they're act all shy and then all of a sudden they're, you know, like, okay, go ahead, dance, you know, I still get paid anyway. So I was like, how can I bring that to an online experience? How can we do that? So I had been, you know, kind of toying around with the idea in my head, and I have my little group of friends here, belly dance friends. We call ourselves the Evil Eye Buddies because we all have the same evil eye necklace that me and my friend picked up in Egypt. And I took it to them and I said, well, you know what I'm thinking of is having an improv hafla, but I want to make it interactive. You know, I want to get people to do things. And so collectively, you know, we kind of bounced ideas around and we came up with the quirky quarantine hafla. And we did our first one, I think it was in June or July timeframe. Then Mish, who was my troupe director that I was in her troupe for a while, she saw it and she goes, you know what? You and Michelle make a great team. This is how she talks. She goes, you guys should do interviews. I'm like, yeah, we should. So I kind of let that idea sit. And then we did a few more of these improv haflas. We did the quirky one, then we did retro. Oh, and then we did, I think, a Halloween inspired one. So we kind of wanted to make things different, you know, because just coming to a show online and just watching is really, you lose that fun element. So then after we had finished all of those, then I was like, okay, now I'm ready to kind of take on this idea of hers. And I approached her and I said, I would love, because you have so many good stories and so much knowledge, I would love to do interviews with you, with Safara, with Kashmira, all of these legends of the Northwest. And she said, yeah. And then I contacted Safara. Safara said yes. And I chatted with Aziza, because if you guys know, Aziza's originally from the Pacific Northwest. She suggested some people I should talk to as well. So we started interviewing Mish in October, and I have yet to edit those videos. It will happen. and then we'll release them, and then we'll do Safara and everyone else that's around in this area.
Be careful if Amani finds out about this. She's going to. Because when we started this, it was going to be super fluffy, and then Amani was like, "What you guys are doing is important, and it's anthropology," and we were like, "Yikes, that's terrifying!" And then we got super full of ourselves for a while, and then now we're back to normal. But
no, Faizeh was terrified. I was like, "Yes, what I'm doing is culturally significant," and then immediately afterwards, I was doing Corey Zamora's interview. And we were doing this tour of her studio because she has so much memorabilia just up all in her walls. It's kind of like a belly dance museum in her studio. And I was like, should I edit this? I'm like, no, I'll leave it untouched so that way people can see years from now how women of her era spoke about it. And I'm just like, shut up, Perizaad, what are you doing? And then I got over it.
Well, Michigan has this amazing closet of these costumes from starting from the 70s, and so it's just we went into her closet and we shot video of it because it's so amazing. All these things she made herself. So one of the things that I learned through belly dance because I wasn't a girly girl is I didn't know how to sew. I had no sewing talent, but I was in a professional troupe here. It's called Blue Lotus Dance Company, and it was run by Nalini, and we had to make our own costumes. Like a lot of troupes, we don't have we don't have benefactors, and so I learned sewing because I had no other choice.
Yep.
And so that's how I learned how to do just enough to make my own costumes and to fix my own costumes. Michelle, on the other hand, she's a fiber arts major and she makes her own costumes. When I make a costume, I am crying and I am swearing and I'm like, why did I do this?
I'm with you so hard on that.
It's not fun for me. I do it out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
So because I have both a single needle machine and a serger, my boyfriend thought I enjoyed sewing. Because I have because I belly dance, and then with Faizeh, we both do medieval reenactment. So that's a lot of making your own clothes as well. And so Michael thought I enjoyed sewing. And so he was like, we should find more things to do so we could sew together. And I'm like, no. I do not enjoy sewing. I am too poor to not sew.
Yep.
I cannot afford to throw money at people to make these things for me. So I sew because I'm broke, and I swear and I cry and I have at least one breakdown every costume.
Yep, same here. And I hate anything with a sleeve. I have sewn sleeves onto a body backwards. So the arm points up. Then you're crying and doing seam ripping, and I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna have to do it again. And then I've done it again, and I do the same thing. The arm is going up in the wrong direction.
Yep. Then the bobbin thread runs out when you only have 6 inches left.
Yeah.
We actually have a friend who does the medieval reenactment with us, and he is the LA belly dance super fan. Everybody knows Philip. He's gonna watch this episode. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Philip.
And but he actually, one time there was this garment that I was trying to figure out that did this weird step sewing, because back then they thought that would save fabric. I don't freaking know, but I was losing my mind, and this saint of a person created a little paper cutout and had straight pins and was pinning them and made a video for me to show how he was well, I think it would go together like this, and then you would do this, and then you would do this, and this is how it would work. And I was like, thank you. He is the best.
I miss him.
See the inside of any of my costumes because it's all just together. I gotta finish this before my show.
I have a costume, a bedla that I made. I probably made it 20 years ago. The belt is still held together with safety pins. I have never added hooks to that thing.
Well, I have the same situation where I have costumes that need fixing, and I've told myself I'm going nowhere. I have no more excuses. I'm not studying for anything. now is the time to be working on fixing all of the things that need fixing, all of those projects that are sitting in my closet that I said I was gonna do. I finished one so far. But like, then like later I'll be like online. I'm like, ooh, look, Soufel Boutique is having a sale.
Oh, Soufel!
Oh, I don't need more costumes.
I'll know because I was in the Visions of Vintage show that Faizeh and Perizaad put on, and I knew for months that I was going to do that show, and I knew for months what costume I was going to wear. Did I fix it more than an hour before I filmed in it? No.
And I'm just finding that out right now.
I bought a beautiful costless costume from Ashley up in Vancouver, and it was just the belt and bra set, and it needed to be set onto a bra and a belt. So I made that, and I knew it was a little bit tight, after I made it, but I'm like, it'll be fine. I was performing online, and within the first 5 seconds of coming out, doing a spin with my veil and bringing my back around, the thing went pop.
Oh no.
The one trick that always has worked for me is crossback straps are godsend. Those will save your ass from whoo. And I also do at the very end of one strap, I'll attach elastic with a little hook and eye closure to the other end, so it will never fully open, like it won't come completely undone, but it will. If that happens, it will keep things in place. So that's
a good tip.
Yeah, that has been really, really helpful to have. But yeah, I knew that was going to happen, and and because I was brought up by it was a very strict dance troupe that I was in. I was always brought up with accidents like that shouldn't happen.
I will say though that like things like that happened once, because like there was this one performance, I was literally a minute away from having to go on stage. And this costume I made myself. I'm not the smallest chested girl. I'm not the largest. I'm not the smallest. But I had created this costume where I looked fabulous, but I had just used regular old thread to connect the straps to the bra, and I had a minute to go on, and it snapped and it busted open. And I was like, thankfully we have a friend who is always holding all of her costumes together with safety pins. So she was able to work it through for me, so that way I could go on and at least get through my performance. But that was the last time. Now I attach all my straps to all my bras with fishing wire. I just get a big ass darning needle and I just push that stuff through and then cover it later with nice pretty things. But I'm like, no, that thing is going to be held together with aircraft wire if it has to be. Like, it's not happening again.
Yeah, you learn your lessons pretty quickly when you're performing. Like I don't use regular thread. I either use coat thread. You can also use dental floss.
I've heard dental floss, yeah.
Yeah, so, or you can take regular thread, you double it so that you have two threads or 2 things of thread going through the needle at a time, so it's like 4 things of thread, and then you run that through wax.
Oh, interesting.
You run the thread through wax so that way it will be more reinforced, but a lot of good lessons learned the hard way.
It's like we were talking about like dancing in restaurants before. I remember one time explaining it to an actor friend who I was like, so when you watch a dancer dancing in a restaurant, she's not doing choreography. She's improvising to the music at that time. She's probably playing her zills, which is a musical instrument that's a completely separate skill that she needs to learn. I'm saying they, any dancer is having to learn. They're having to navigate the crowd. For tips to make sure there's no children that are going to run into their cane that's swinging in this moment. They're having to navigate the waiter. They're having to navigate the piece of glass that just went into their foot and not show the fact that there's a piece of glass that just embedded itself in their foot because the waiter got most of the glass out from that glass that broke, but not all of it. It's just everything that's happening at once. And it's hard. It's hard being a dancer. Like, this is why, like, when you see dancers like backstage, they're like, Let me tell you, kid, like there's a reason for it.
That is so true. And that's why I did that little reel on the Mandalorian take. Because like, I was watching the Mandalorian and Mando's like, I'm very expensive. I'm like, yeah, we do a lot of stuff. We shouldn't be cheap.
So what's in the future for Mariana?
So I have quite a few shows coming up in February.
Okay.
I have the Tacoma Dance Review coming up February 7. Then I have a performance for Westlake Dance Center. A lot of dance studios here are closed and haven't been open for a very long time, and a lot of studios are suffering. Right now, they can stay open with like 5 people in their classes, which really is nothing. So this is a fundraiser for the studio. And then I'll be performing for the Bellylicious show February 13th. They are a group out of Portland, Oregon. And then I have training classes happening through my local city here that are happening online as well. It's on my website.
Where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Mariana Bellydance NW. And I have my own website, marianabellydancenw.com. And you can find me on TikTok at Mariana Belly Dancer if you like silly videos about me working out with Batettes and the Northwest.
Well, that was Mariana. Mariana, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us this week. We look forward to seeing your shows coming up in February, this weekend, in fact. But otherwise, I'm Perizaad.
Faizeh.
And this has been Raqs Talks. Please give us a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Ma salama.